Hey everyone, and welcome to Control Freaks, a podcast where we talk about the fascinating convergence of finance, technology, and human emotion within the construction industry. My name is JD Whitaker. I'm the head of product at ControlQore, and I am a recovering control freak. So it is springtime, and we all know what that means. It's time to get going on our accountant's review and start building those WIP reports. What is a WIP report? WIP stands for work in progress, but truth be told, a WIP report isn't just a report. It's more like a category of reports. And those reports are intended to help you understand where your projects stand financially at a given moment in time. There's a few different types of WIP reports. I'll hit on two today. So the first one, that my personal favorite, the backlog report. And ironically, backlog actually looks forward. This report answers the question, what is my expected future revenue? It's a forecast of what's coming down the pipeline based on active contracts or work that's in progress, and awarded jobs, projects that are getting ready to start. The second report that we're going to hit on today is your over/under billing report. So this is your classic WIP report, the one that's used when qualifying for your payment and performance bonding, also known as your PMP bonding limits. At its core, this report helps answer what it sounds like. Was I over or under billed at the end of the year? Why that is important to know, we'll hit on in a minute as we build a WIP report. But it's also an excellent internal management tool, helping you evaluate how well your team is tracking actual costs and keeping up with progress billing. So given the value of this type of reporting, why hasn't more been done to automate the creation of a reliable WIP report? The best way to answer that question is to create a WIP report manually so that we can examine each of its components. It's pretty easy to get overwhelmed when it comes to preparing a WIP report. It can get really messy. The way I have found success in really understanding this report at its core is by just breaking it down to its primary inputs. Every WIP report at its core really only has 6 primary inputs. It's a really great starting place if you have to build a WIP report from scratch. So let's start with the revenue part. So every WIP report is going to have some variation of original contract value. This is a static value that's defined in the project agreement, or you can call it like the contract, the prime contract. There are plenty of different names for a lot of the same things in our industry. So original contract value, it's a static value defined in the project agreement. The other component for revenue is approved change orders. Now this is a dynamic number, meaning it's changing. So out of the 6 primary inputs for a WIP report, 4 of those are dynamic. So that's a pretty good hint right off the bat, like why this report is really difficult to generate manually and also automate. Let's jump over to the other component of the cost component of our budgeted or planned amounts. So we have an original budgeted cost. So like this is a static value defined by the project estimator, usually communicated in a budget. I'm sure there's other ways to communicate this, but at the end of the day, it's basically saying, hey, this is our plan. This is what we are forecasting. This is what we've projected our costs to be. So this is our original budgeted cost. You can also call it original committed costs or just our committed costs. And then you have to capture the part where, hey, stuff changes. So we have an approved commitment change order component. You can call it other things, vendor changes, change directives. But either way, we have now captured 4 out of the 6. And then let's move over to the actual amounts. So here we have the revenue part, right? So as we continue to do work and then we turn around and bill for it, somehow we need to be able to capture that actual amount. So it's a dynamic number that should eventually end up in your accounts receivable general ledger. And then here is the cost component, ever moving target, or that constantly evolving input cost. So this is a dynamic number that should eventually end up in your accounts payable or truthfully your job cost reporting. So focus on these 6 inputs first and the rest falls into place. All right, so let's build a backlog report first. This is going to be quick. It's actually not going to capture every component of the 6 primary components. So this report is truly intended to give management a forward-looking view of what's coming down the pipe. So first question we're going to look at is we got some projects and we need to know, are these projects in progress or are they bidding? So having a project stage, really important when it comes to a backlog report. So let's go ahead and fill out our project stage. Okay, so now that we know which projects we're working with and the stage they're in, we know it's worth our time to at least go and retrieve some information about these particular projects. So let's go and figure out what their contract value is. Now, if you have just a couple, it's not a big deal. Maybe you can go look up that contract value in maybe the budget. Kind of the point actually is like, where is the standardized place to store the contract value? Unless you have something like this, just right out from the gate, like knowing even what like the potential revenue was for each of these projects is already a hard question to answer unless you have some amount of organization and you have that aggregated or consolidated in a common location. So let's go ahead and fill in our contract value. Wonderful. So we know that we have 5 projects. 3 of them are in progress. 2 of them are getting ready to start. Now, we want to know future revenue. So if we've already billed for some of these projects, we need to take that amount off the table. So let's answer the question, how much have we billed through? In this case, we're just looking at it from like the end of the year because we're doing like an annual forecast. So we want to know how much do we bill for these projects through the end of the prior year. And obviously these are still to start, so they shouldn't have any billing logged against them. So let's go ahead and fill out our actual billed amounts through the end of the prior year. Okay, now that we've answered that question, we're getting closer. We want to know what our remaining contract value is, which makes sense. We can say, hey, we have a contract value. Now realize I am simplifying this a little bit. Like I'm using contract value, but contract value really should be kind of the most up-to-date contract amount. So if there were any changes or revisions to that contract value, you should be able to capture that here. That's the actual amount to be using. Okay, so let's go ahead and figure out what our remaining contract value is. So I threw a little hint here, contract value minus the total billed. Okay, we're getting even closer. So we have our remaining contract value. And now that we're sitting here, we're at the beginning of 2025 or whenever, beginning of the year, middle of the year. I mean, the questions remain the same. You want to know, okay, we have this much contract value left to bill. And there's a lot of different ways to probably answer this particular question. At the end of the day, what you're doing is you're forecasting what you intend or what you anticipate you're going to be billing on each of these projects. Now, if you look at the project and if you don't know for sure where the project is at, but you can just kind of shooting from the hip, you can say, hey, there's a pretty good chance that we're going to be totally done with this project by the end of the year. And if there's enough time left, and it's an annual forecast, then we don't need to dive into intense to figure out kind of how much is going the forecasted billing amount for the current year. So let's put in our best guess for our forecasted billing. Okay, so just let's point out what we're saying here. We're saying this guy is going to finish before the end of the year. This guy's going to finish in this year, and this guy, well, there's 5.8 million left, but we're saying that however we figured that out, we're going to guess that we're not going to quite finish that project by the end of the year. For some reason, so this one we're going to knock out and get done, even though it's 2 start, we feel like we can get that done by the end of the year. And then for this one, we won't be able to get this one done before the end of the year, but we think that we'll have at least around $400,000 worth billed before the end of the year or by the end of the year. So now we can start to piece together even now that we're doing this particular forecast, you're really starting to lay the foundation for the following year's forecast as well. Okay, great. So now we have this backlog report and we're looking out, let's say I am part of the sales and estimating team and I'm thinking, okay, all right, cool. So we confidently say we have about almost $6 million on the books right now for this year. We have a goal of, whatever, let's say 8 million. Now we know kind of approximately project size that we should go be chasing. Where should we put our efforts, our time, energy, what kind of jobs to be bidding? It gives you a snapshot or a starting point to ask really good questions. 2026, while it kind of feels like it's a little ways out, at least we know that we have somewhat of a start on what projects are lined up for, let's say 9 to 12 months getting going. So this kind of gives us the idea that, those other projects that might take a little bit more time to develop a relationship or foster the bidding opportunities for a larger project, we know that Okay, we need to at least get one of those in the pipeline and get working on that as we look out to 2026. So there's the different levels of visibility, or how far out you want to look on the horizon, should give you some amount of idea on where to focus your time.